going to discuss about heterojunction solar cell fabrication and characterization. And this is the outline of my presentation. Uh, my presentation would be divided in two sections. In section one, we will discuss about the silicon-based heterojunction solar cell, and in second section, I will discuss about my research experience, like crystalline silicon-based solar cell fabrication, thin-film solar cell fabrication, and passivated contact solar cell fabrication. And finally, I will summarize my talk in the last slide. So let's start section one, silicon-based heterojunction solar cell. So as we know, before starting this silicon-based heterojunction solar cell, we should discuss about the why do we need solar cell and how it works. So as we know, most of the energy produced from the fossil fuels, and if we burn those fossil fuels, it start emitting various kind of toxic gases, even greenhouse gases, and ultimately it's responsible for the climate change and bad air quality. Thus, we need to find out an alternative energy source which should be sustainable. So, renewable energy seems a promising alternative for the energy source. And in the renewable energy, if we see photovoltaic seems promising, because if we see the photovoltaic cells, it has potential to provide economical and environment friendly source of power generation. In addition to this, it can provide the flexibility to develop centralized as well as decentralized generation of power system. For example, if we want to make a power generation system at the remote location, for example, if I am taking Arunachal Pradesh, solar cell can work, but other renewable energy is difficult compared to the solar cell. So that's why this would give opportunity for everyone to use the energy, and it will fulfill the availability and acceptability criteria for every individual. Also, this provides the clean energy source with no potential damage to environment. Due to this, we need to work on the photovoltaic. So now we are going to discuss how photovoltaic works. So as we all know, solar cell is a semiconductor device that converts directly solar energy into the electrical energy. So solar cell can fabricate with N-type, P-type, or any or intrinsic from the any intrinsic semiconductors. If shine the light, electron hole pair generates and gets separated from hole transport and electron transport layer. It can be clearly it can be understand from this band diagram. So if we shine the light, electron hole pair generates and electron moves from valence band to conduction band, and due to the band offset, the electron cannot move in this direction. Electron will move in the electron transport layer direction, and hole will move, and ultimately it will go to the load, and it will provide the it will convert solar energy into electrical energy. So now we are going to so before starting heterojunction solar cell details, we need to know homojunction and heterojunction also. So as we can see, this solar cell can make from different type, like means with the N-type, P-type, and intrinsic. Along with this, the solar cell can fabricate through homojunction as well as heterojunction. So now we are going to first we are going to discuss about the what is homojunction and what is heterojunction solar cell. Heterojunction. So if we take same material and making junction in that material, so that band gap of the material, electron affinity of that material don't change, it's called homojunction. So we can understand from this band diagram. Suppose if you are taking P-type crystalline silicon material and making N-type junction in this material with phosphorus diffusion. So after making junction, it will the Fermi level will get aligned, and it will be the band offset will created. and due to potential gradient, the band offset will create, and that will be useful for the electron and hole separation also. So this is a best example for homojunction. So in solar cell technology, aluminum BSF crystalline silicon solar cell is a homojunction solar cell. Similarly, if we see the heterojunction, so two different band gap material if we are using for the fabrication making junction. For example, if we are taking N type absorber material, making junction with some wide band gap absorber material, so the band gap of these two semiconductors are different. Electron affinity is also different for these two different semiconductors. So this makes heterojunction solar cell. So, so from both means homojunction and heterojunction can be used for the solar cell fabrication. So mostly heterojunction cells are thin film cell and amorphous thin film solar cell. Example CIGS, cadmium telluride, perovskite. All these are heterojunction solar cell. Even amorphous based silicon cell also heterojunction cell. So now we are going to see the generation of solar cell and their performance. So solar cell generation divided mainly in three parts: first generation, second, and third generation. First generation is all silicon based solar cell comes in the first generation. In the second generation, only thin film solar cell comes in the second generation, and third generation is new concept. Like perovskite is now is at the peak, and this comes in the third generation. In addition to this, quantum dot solar cell can also come in the is coming in the third generation solar cell. So as we can, and here we are comparing the cell level efficiency with module level efficiency of all these solar cell. So we can see silicon based solar cell gives highest efficiency about 26.7% on the cell level. This is lab scale, and this module is also on the lab scale level, so it's giving 24.4%. While if we see the perovskite solar cell, it's once cell level efficiency is 25.5%, but the module level efficiency goes significant down. That means the mismatching between each cell is different than the mismatching between the silicon based monocrystalline cells. Due to this, only till date, only first generation and second generation solar cells are only commercialized. If we see the solar cell and their markets, so this is the market status from 1980s to 2019. So in this, we can see the maximum market is captured by the silicon based solar cell. So in this graph, light blue bar light blue is used for the monocrystalline, dark blue is for the multicrystalline, and green is used for the thin film solar cell. So if we see in the 80s, more than 95% module was coming from the crystalline silicon solar cell. With increasing the time, in 90s, thin film started coming up with a decent efficiency and a module. So at that time, people started working on the cadmium telluride. But due to the toxic nature of cadmium and tellurium, people started thinking about the environment hazardous and health hazardous. So they slowly reduced down the cadmium telluride based solar cell, and again this silicon got recovered, means got boom from the decline. So similar trend we can observe two times. And now in 2019, approximately 90% of market is captured by monocrystalline silicon solar cell. That means silicon has capability. Silicon has long history to pulling rabbit out of the hat. That means its crystalline silicon solar cell is always giving some surprising result. That's why it's in the demand. So if we go in the specific, so the aluminum BSF solar cell is a commercialized solar cell, and this is the architecture of aluminum BSF solar cell. If you see any installed module in the rooftop or anywhere, most of the module will be aluminum BSF solar cell only. So in this P-type 100 silicon wafers they used for the absorber, and make the diffusion with phosphorus to make N-type layer, and then anti-reflection coating, and the metallization on top of it. Similarly, in the back side, what we need to do, we need to put aluminum and do the firing. So it will form the P plus layer that we called as a back surface field. Back surface field is nothing, just pushing out the generated carrier towards the uh, front side. For example, if we shine the light on it, so electron hole pair get generated, and the electron will move in this direction, hole will start moving in this direction. That means the electron will also like to move in this direction to recombine with the holes. But if we put the back surface field, that means it's giving, pushing upward whole electron in upward direction, and this N-type layer will pulling up the of the of the of the electrons. That means due to potential gradient it's happening, and that's why this solar cell gives good efficiency, and it's already commercialized. But this technology is not free from the disadvantage. The major disadvantage in this technology is required high temperature process, and temperature need is in between 800 to 1000 degrees Celsius. If we see, so junction formation happens in the range of 900 degrees Celsius. That is very high temperature for industry. So thermal, but due to this high temperature process, thermal budget goes up in the process, and due to this they cannot reduce the price of solar cell. Even due to high temperature process, this process time is very high, so the production rate will be slow compared to the other solar cell technology. And since it requires high temperature, if we use thinner wafer, less than 100 micron wafer, Bowing effects starts coming. The wafer will start bending due to stress in the process, and it will start reliability will be the problem in that. In addition to these points, some of the industry reported that light-induced degradation in P-type crystalline silicon solar cell. Basically, this problem happens because of the boron diffusion. So, due to this, people started thinking about to use the crystalline silicon wafer and make some efficient device with heterojunction solar cell. This is the architecture of heterojunction solar cell. In that, N-type wafer people use to avoid the light degradation, and recombination velocity also is the key role in this. And after that, they need to deposit amorphous silicon as a whole transport layer, and N-type amorphous silicon as a electron transport layer. A benefit of this heterojunction solar cell is it requires low temperature process, means we can make solar cell below the 250 degrees Celsius. Due to low temperature process, this can be used, the output, production output will be high compared to the crystalline silicon based. And due to low temperature process, the wafer bowing problem which was observed in the aluminum BSF solar cell is suppressed because of the low temperature process. Thus, now we are going to discuss about more detail about the progress in conversion efficiency of heterojunction solar cells. So, the first concept of heterojunction solar cell came is reported by Sanyo from Japan in 1988. They started working in 1988. In 1995, they achieved 14% efficiency at the R&D level. With the time, they could reach up to 22.3%, and they started making mass production in 2001. After 2007, in 2009, this Sanyo, Panasonic acquired the Sanyo to produce heterojunction based solar cell, and this is the efficiency chart, energy efficiency chart for the heterojunction solar cell, and this highlighted efficiency came from the heterojunction solar cell. So up to 2000. 13, 14, this Panasonic was the best in heterojunction solar cell. Then recently, Kaneka started working on the same type of solar cell, a similar type of heterojunction solar cell, and they are now a best efficient solar cell production from the heterojunction solar cell. So now from the next slide onward, we are going to discuss how this Sanyo started the heterojunction solar cell fabrication and what Kaneka did different than the Sanyo and Panasonic to make the best efficient solar cell. So let's start looking at the progress of heterojunction solar cell started by Sanyo. So Sanyo made first heterojunction solar cell with N-type silicon wafer. This is the architecture of that. With N-type silicon wafer, they put the P-type amorphous silicon on it to make the whole transport layer and transparent conductor. And backside directly they put the metal. And the thickness of this whole transport layer they varied from the from 50 nanometer to 50 angstrom to 400 angstrom, and they could achieve the efficiency up to 12%. But it is important to notice that the current density was getting down with increasing the thickness of whole transport layer, but the VOC was stable and fill factor was also stable. But the VOC is significantly poor, and current density and fill factor is also poor. So to find out the reason behind that, they analyzed and found due to the surface interface defect, the high defect state density at the interface of N-type crystalline silicon and P-type amorphous silicon. VOC is getting down because of the surface recombination. So to improve this, and poor current density is because of the current density decrease is because of the parasitic absorption during with increasing the thickness of amorphous silicon. Then what they did, they took the N-type silicon wafer, they put the passivation layer, intrinsic amorphous silicon they put it, and then P-type of amorphous silicon and TCO they put it. So significant difference they observed, like VOC got improved up to 600 millivolt, and current density is still struggling, and fill factor also got improved, and they could make approximately 14% efficiency. In this condition, what they did, they changed the thickness of passivation layer from approximately some few nanometer to approximately 250 nanometers, something like that. 25 nanometers. Yeah. So, and still the current density was poor. So to improve the current density and VOC of the device, what they did, they took the N-type silicon wafer and textured it to reduce the optical loss from the device, and put the passivation layer on it, and then whole transport layer and the TCO. And in the back side, what they do, they did the back surface field of N-type amorphous silicon. So it will start pushing the carrier in the front side, and it will attract the electron from it will efficient the electron collection. So from this device architecture, they could make 18.1% efficiency and 18.1% efficiency, and VOC was slightly improved, 614 millivolt VOC they got. Current density is 37.9. This got improved. Then after that, to improve further, what they did, they took the textured wafer and put the passivation layer front and both sides, so that most of the dangling bond will saturate with the passivation layer, and then they put the P-type amorphous silicon on top and N-type amorphous silicon on the bottom as a this will be as an electron tunneling layer, and P-type will be whole transport layer. And then they put the TCO on front and back both side, and metal contact front and both side, silver metal contact. So they could make efficiency of 21.3% with this device architecture. It is important to notice that this device architecture is bifacial device architecture. That means like you can utilize solar solar radiation from bottom side as well as top side. And if you notice that the cell look exactly symmetrical from top to bottom. Like if you see top side amorphous silicon, means p-type and TCO, this side is also, so it won't give stress in the film, so that you can use means we can use ultra thin silicon wafer for the device fabrication. And the advantage of this device is we can install in any direction, like slanted or vertical or horizontal. The diffuse light will also be used from this device, and they could make after that they could make up to 21.3% efficiency with 717 VOC. By 2008 they achieved 22.3% efficiency, and after that Panasonic acquired Sanyo, and they started making bifacial module for the rooftop installation. But they could not achieve above 23%. In between that time, Kaneka started working on it, and they were reported the best efficiency of heterojunction solar cell, and they could make 26.7% efficiency, and they called this device name heterojunction back contact solar cell. So if you notice that they use crystalline silicon and then passivation and the anti-reflection coating on the top side, no metal contact on the top side. The both electron and hole collection is coming from the bottom side only. So 100% area is open for the light radiation, for the solar radiation. So due to this, they could make highest efficiency solar cell, and their current density they got 42.5 milliampere per centimeter square, and as per Shockley equalizer limit we can go up to 44 milliampere per centimeter square. So they could reach up to this. Yeah, so this looks very promising candidate for the heterojunction solar cell application, and they made commercial modules. But this technique is not free from the disadvantage. The major disadvantage in this technique is the light absorption in amorphous silicon. That limits the current density of heterojunction solar cell. Even this amorphous silicon is unstable in light atmosphere. So due to this, the module means cell reliability will get decreased with the time. So that is the major problem in the solar cell in this technique. In addition to this, one more important major disadvantage in this, to make the amorphous silicon, we need to use pyrophoric and toxic gases, for example, xylene, phosphine, TMV, germane. These gases are really toxic and pyrophoric. So we need to make a proper tubing to do to process with these gases. Thus, people started thinking the same device architecture, and they called as a silicon-based passivation content. In this device architecture, people use some oxide material for the hole and electron transport layer. So why this passivated contact solar cell came in the picture? As we discussed in the previous slide, light-induced degradation in amorphous silicon and the parasitic absorption was the main reason for that. So this passivated contact solar cell came from the thin film and organic photovoltaic technology. People already have using transition metal oxide for the in the organic photovoltaic as well as in thin film, and it's giving pretty well performance in that field. So due to wide band gap material, it has low parasitic absorption compared to the amorphous silicon, because amorphous silicon is having band gap in the range of 1.7 to 1.8 electron volt. So, and as we discussed in the previous slides, heterojunction needs can deposit at low temperature. This cell can also be deposited at low temperature, less than 200 degrees Celsius. And work function is very crucial to making any device. So work function can easily tune with the oxygen content of the transition metal oxide. So these are the different transition metal oxide used for the hole and electron transport layer. So if the work function of TMO is in the range of 7 electron volt, that can be used for the whole transport layer. And if the work function is low, means in the range of 4 electron volt, that can be used as a electron transport layer. So these are moly oxide, vanadium oxide, tungsten oxide, these tantalum oxide, these are used for the whole transport layer, while magnesium, titanium, and some fluorides also used for the electron transport layer. And this is the efficiency progress of a transition metal oxide. So the benchmark is, as we discussed, HIT IBC solar cell made by Kaneka. So this is they are here, and a transition metal oxide with the help of passivated contact solar cell, people started working, and the highest efficiency reported by EPFL was 23% from moly oxide transition metal, moly oxide whole transport layer. So this can show us the hope to reach from here to here. So now we are going to discuss how to make this heterojunction silicon solar cell. So HIT solar cell and passivated contact solar cell both are heterojunction solar cell, and the fabrication step is almost same except HTL ETL deposition and passivation deposition. So as we know, wafer fabrication is very commercialized, and we can get we can get wafers from the industry. So even solar cell manufacturer also take wafer from the industry. So what they do, they grow the ingot of single junction silicon and slice it with the wire cutting. So during cutting of the wafers, lots of damage happens on the surface of wafer. So that damage we need to remove. So approximately 10 to 15 micron from each side damage happens. So those damage we need to remove. And since metal wire was used in the cutting of wafer, so that kills the wafer quality. So those impurity we need to remove, and the assessment of the quality of wafer can be done from the minority carrier lifetime and optical microscope. After cleaning the wafer, we need to move to the texturization, and well established technique is for the texturization is NaO, HKOH, and IP. And our the characterization should be the reflectance measurement of the texture sample. So we should target to reduce the reflectance up to 10% in visible range. Then finally, passivation can try from the different dielectric material like silicon oxide, silicon nitride, L2O3, and all. And the characterization should be the lifetime CV, capacitance voltage measurement, IV measurement, XRR, and ellipsometry. Then after that we can make the whole transport layer and whole and electron transport layer. With the different transition metal oxide layers, we can make whole and electron transport layer, and the characterization will be the lifetime and temperature and area dependent dark IV. Then finally, we need to deposit transparent conductor and metallization. Metallization is a crucial part in the heterojunction solar cell. We should maintain the aspect ratio of metallization. If we spread the metal contact, then shadow loss will be high, and it will give the poor efficiency of the device. Yeah, so these are the heterojunction based update and the fabrication technique. Now I'm going to move in the second section, which is my research experience. So first I will start with the baseline process of crystalline silicon solar cell. So this work was done in NCPRE at IIT Bombay under Professor Chetan Singh Solanki. So our objective was to make the improved efficiency crystalline silicon solar cell. So the commercial wafers solar cell we take, and we were trying to make improve the 1% absolute efficiency in the wafers. So to find out the gap, to find out the scope of the improvement, after each layer of deposition, we were characterizing the samples optically and electrically to find out the where can we improve the improve the where can we put our effort to improve the device performance. And two type of this work was done with the collaboration of leading industry like Moserware and Central Electronic Limited. So this was the two sequence we were following. So in this sequence, the gray box activity was ours and the white box activity was industry. So for example, if we take this one, so industry gives texturing, diffusion, edge isolation and ARC. That means half proceed solar cell they gives, and we put metallization, contact firing and cell measurement in this. And in this condition they gives just textured wafer, we make the complete solar cell out of it. And we were suggesting our input to industry to change their line process for the efficiency improvement. So in continuation of that, we took the as cut, as received wafer from the industry, and we did the SAR damage removal of the silicon wafer, and we found the plane surface of silicon wafer in 7 minutes. After that, this SDR sample we moved for the texturization with 2% NaOH, and we measured the reflectance of the samples, and we found the reflectance is coming in the range of 10% in visible region. Then the optimized textured wafer we use for the we moved in the tubular furnace for the diffusion. So this p-type wafer we were using. So we use phosphorus trichloride or phosphorus pentachloride for the diffusion. So with the diffusion we make the N-type emitter on the wafer, and this is the sheet resistance of the wafer after the diffusion. So at 860 degrees Celsius, we got uniform sheet resistance throughout the wafer, and then we removed the silicate glass, and backside we put it the aluminum and did the firing to make the back contact as well as BSF, back surface field of silicon solar cell, and on the top we deposited the silicon nitride as an anti-reflection coating and passivation layer. So, and after that we measured the cell efficiency. So approximately 15.97 efficiency we got in 2014. This work was done in 2014. And after in Cygus now the NCPR is getting cell level efficiency approximately 18.5 or 19%. I am not very sure about that, but they got. So in addition to crystalline silicon solar cell fabrication, baseline fabrication, I have explored the thin film solar cell fabrication also. This was my PhD work. So in that time I was doing CZT SSC, thin film solar cell fabrication and characterization. So if we see the thin film absorber materials, so CIGS, cadmium telluride and perovskite solar cells are giving very good efficiency in the range of 20%. So, but if we carefully observe these materials, so these absorber materials consist of either rare earth element, toxic elements, or unstable. So, for example, indium is a rare earth element, cadmium and tellurium is a toxic element, and this perovskite lead is toxic material even, and this is unstable. So people started thinking some alternative absorber material for thin film solar cell application. Then they started thinking about the CZT SSC, which has similar kind of optical and electrical optical property. This CZT SSC has absorption coefficient in the range of 10 to power 4 per centimeter. From this absorption coefficient, this absorber material can absorb maximum light in less than 1 micron thick film, and the band gap can be tuned from 1 to 1.5 electron volt. And if we see the Shockley Pfizer limit, so the maximum efficiency can achieve at 1.45 electron volt, and that is 33% efficiency. So but this material seems very promising for the thin film solar cell, but this is not free from the disadvantage. So if we see the phase diagram of CZTS, this is the window where we can get phase pure CZTS. If we deviate the atomic percentage of copper, zinc, and tin from this window, we will get CZTS along with impurity phase, and that impurity phase creates the recombination center in the absorber, and it's sometimes it stunts the device efficiency also. So it's very hard to hit this point. So for the fabrication of CZTS, we were using potential dynamic electrodeposition process, and we use two type of conducting substrate, FTO and MO coated glass. So on FTO coated glass, we were using copper, tin, copper, and zinc metal precursor we deposited from the electrodeposition method. And similarly, on moly coated glass, we were using copper, tin, and zinc layer on MO coated. So these precursors were annealed in the sulfur selenium or sulfur plus selenium atmosphere to make the compound semiconductor. And this is the technique we use for the sulfurization. So this is our sample. We put it the sulfur selenium, and we started annealing it at high temperature to make compound semiconductor out of it. So first we are going to discuss the phase formation after sulfurization of the precursor. So this is the so in this condition, what we did, we deposited copper, tin, copper, zinc on FTO coated glass and sulfurized it at 550 degrees Celsius for 2 hours to make the compound semiconductor. So this is the XRD pattern of the sulfurized sample. So in this XRD pattern, the star symbols is used. The peak position of star symbols is used for the substrate peak position, and the delta is for CZTS, and the circular cross is for copper sulfide. So this is the highlighted peak position we got impurity phase of copper sulfide in this precursor, while in this precursor that phase is not present. Thus, and in addition, unfortunately, CZTS XRD peak position is common with the other impurity phase of zinc sulfide and Cu2SnS3 that cannot be distinguished by XRD alone. So for that we need to do the Raman spectroscopy. So for the same sample we used for the Raman spectroscopy, and we did 3 random point on each sample and named as a P1, P2, P3 for both sample, and we found copper sulfide impurity phase got in at the point P1 and P2, while this one is giving phase pure CZTS. That means inhomogeneous copper sulfide forms in the CZTS. To confirm that, we performed the Raman mapping, and the area was selected like 10 by 100 by 100 micrometer square, and the scan points were 100 into 100 points in each sample. From this, we found that CTCZ3 precursor. This precursor gives phase pure CZTS, phase pure and uniform CZTS, while in this condition, patches of copper sulfide we observed. Now, then we moved towards the making CZT SSA on moly coated glass, because molybdenum is used as a back contact for thin film solar cell. So our objective was to synthesize CZTS and their solid solution from electrodeposited metal precursor and study the sulfur selenium replacement reaction. These are the annealing parameters we used, and these are the process we use for the making solid solution. First, we tried to make phase pure CZTS and CZTSC on MO coated glass, and this is the XRD pattern of the same sample. So at different temperature we annealed in the sulfur atmosphere, different temperature we annealed the metal precursor in selenium atmosphere. In this condition, the red highlighted arrow indicates the impurity phase in the system. So from these XRD patterns, we found phase pure CZTS forms at higher temperature for longer duration, while phase pure CZTSC forms at lower temperature for shorter duration in 1 minute 500 degrees Celsius. Then we moved to make the solid solution of CZTSSC. For that, we use 3 approach. One, we make the phase pure CZTS and annealed in the sulfur atmosphere. Another approach was make the phase pure CZTSC annealed in the selenium atmosphere, and and make the metal precursor annealed in the sulfur plus selenium atmosphere. From this, we found the asymmetrical peak in XRD. Due to this, we started analyzing the stress of the deposited film. So for that we use different incidence angle to form we did grazing incidence X-ray diffraction for this. So incidence angle was taken from 0.5 to 5 degree with with the increment of 0.5 degree. That means if we put 0.5 incidence angle, so the uh, the XRD will give surface information. If we increase the incidence angle like this, so it will give the bottom information. So for the phase pure CJTSC and CJTS, the sulfur and selenium is homogeneous throughout the sample. In this condition, CJTS, sulfur is homogeneously distributed throughout the sample, while phase pure CJTSC, the selenium is homogeneous throughout the sample. It is important to notice that in this condition, from top to bottom, sulfur and selenium proportion is varying. That means the composition sulfur selenium composition gradients happens in this material. This will give you opportunity to make the graded band gap absorber material, which would be useful for the graded band gap absorber material, and it will absorb the absorption will be efficient in this condition. Then we then I moved to the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, USA, and I could make the solar cell over there on CJTSC absorber. So this is the dark IV of the solar cell, and this is the light IV, and this is quantum efficiency. So we could make 10.6% efficient solar cell from the CJTSC absorber, and this is quantum efficiency. So from quantum efficiency we can see this region is not so efficient. That means whole collection is not efficient at the interface of molybdenum and CJTS. So and after that, after getting the PhD degree, I moved to the IIT Madras for the postdoctoral work, and here we are working on the crystalline silicon waste passivated content. So as we discussed in the first section, the amorphous silicon has a serious parasitic absorption in the solar cell, and that degrades that reduce the overall device performance. So our target is to use the wide band gap metal oxide for the passivation context solar cell, and these are the criteria we have done. So for the making the complete solar cell, we are planning to use we are using atomic layer deposition technique to fabricate the complete solar cells. Means whole transport layer, electron transport layer, passivation layer, everything will be made by atomic layer deposition. So before moving to our device architecture, first we need to discuss how ALD works. So this is the this is ALD means name is atomic layer deposition technique. So we can deposit up to atom level of thin film. So this is the typical one cycle of ALD deposition in first, and it's divided into 4 steps. One cycle means 4 steps we need to run. In first step, reaction 1 will done, the dose will go, and then in second step we need to evacuate that the leftover unreacted material from the chamber, then put the second reactant in the chamber, and fourth step is to evacuate the chamber. So we can understand here easily. So our ALD system is plasma as well as thermal ALD. So this is we are using hybrid ALD system. So in that we can use thermal as well as plasma ALD. So first we are going to see thermal ALD. So this is our substrate with unsaturated bonds that can be called as a dangling bond. So we first put the precursor. So the precursor will go and sit on the dangling bonds and make the bonding with dangling bonds, and then some unreacted precursor will be also there in the chamber that we need to remove. So we remove through the purging or evacuating the chamber. Then second, so this is the monolayer of metastable metal precursor. Then to complete the reaction, we need to put water vapor, and it's from the single layer of the material. And then again the leftover metal precursor need to remove from this. So for that again need to purge. So this is typical thermal ALD sequence. If we want to do plasma enhanced ALD system, so we need to remove this sequence, put oxygen plasma in place of the water vapor and make the layers. So, so, now we are going to discuss why we need to make why we need to use ALD system for this project. So we are planning to make two type of device. One is planar solar cell, one is textured solar cell. So planar solar cell will be used for the as a bottom cell for tandem solar cell application, and textured solar cell will be the passivated will be used as a single junction passivated contact solar cell. So since texturing is very rough, and if we this is random texture, so if we use other technique like sputtering evaporation, it may not cover the full area. That's why we need atomic layer deposition technique for the solar cell application. And if and the film thickness should be ultra thin, like in 1 nanometer, 2 nanometer thick film we need to deposit. So other techniques is cannot do such kind of conformal deposition, and these are the advantage of ALD. This can be used for suitable for ultra thin film deposition. And since we are using remote plasma ALD system, so surface damage will be very low, and thermal ALD don't do any surface damage. So all the layer in the device is not more than 200 nanometers. So if suppose if you are putting passivation layer, and after that we need to put whole transport layer. If we are putting from the sputtering, so the passivation layer may damage because of the sputtering energy, the plasma energy. That's why we are using ALD, remote ALD system for this system. So from now we are moving to the summary of my presentation. So from the first section we can summarize. Sino gave 3 key steps for the achievement of good efficiency solar cell. So we need to, if we want to work on the heterojunction solar cell, amorphous silicon based heterojunction solar cell, we need to assure the amorphous silicon quality and how it's making junction between the crystalline silicon. And metal grid is also critical. Shadow loss should be minimum in the metal silver paste should not spread throughout the sample. And in addition to that, we need to work on the reduction of absorption in amorphous silicon and transparent conductor layers. And in this is the summary from the second section. So as per my experience, I found crystalline silicon wafer quality is very crucial to get good efficiency, and wafer processing and handling is important step in fabrication of solar cell. In the CZTS based solar cell, poor hole collection is the main reason for the less efficiency, and we need to explore the phase formation and interface between absorber and different layers of CZTS. In addition to this, I can say the passivation contact solar cell have potential to give alternative of amorphous silicon heterojunction solar cell. Now I am moving to the very important slide for my life. So I would like to thanks my all supervisor from MTech to postdoctoral researcher for their encouragement and motivation and the direction. So first I would like to acknowledge my PhD supervisors, Professor K.R. Balasubramaniam and Professor Manoj Nirgat from Department of Energy Science and Engineering, IIT Bombay, and my postdoc supervisor, Professor Jatin Kerat, Department of Physics and Utrecht University, Netherlands. Professor Rath has given me full-fledged facility, free hand to do whatever we want to explore. And then I would like to I will acknowledge my mentor, internship mentor, Dr. Michael Van Hest at NRL. He has given full access of his lab to explore my research activity. And Professor Agrawal from Purdue University, he gave me opportunity to learn, to see how to make the thin film solar cell and how to deposit molybdenum on glass substrate. And I would like to thanks Professor Sadhan Mahapatra from Tezpur Central University and Professor Chetan Singh Solanki for the supervision of my MTech work. And also I would like to thank NCPRA, Sirius, and CS Magib and DSEC for the funding support. And in addition to this, I would like to acknowledge Department of Energy Science and Engineering, IIT Bombay, I, IIT Madras, and Tezpur Central University. And I would like to thank my lab members. Thank you.